While celebrating a birthday party in the town of Cedra in Puerto Rico, every man you see on camera, including one that you can't see, will be dead just seconds after this frame of the video. In one of the most gruesome organized gang hits to ever take place on American soil since the St. Valentine's Day massacre, where mobsters in Chicago disguised as police lined up 7 men against a wall and executed them. And just a reminder to all the young guys, every single one of these men was armed, and 2 of them even got a chance to shoot back. But when you outmatched, it doesn't matter what kind of gun you have or how many bullets, especially when your enemy has the ups on you. And to truly show their brutality, the hitman parked the car down the street, walked up to the scene, and stood over every single one of them. Meet El Burro and his crime syndicate. From the worst crime scenes I've ever seen publicly available on the news between El Burro's gang and Los Viaros, to one of the most popular rappers in Puerto Rico, C Dobleta, along with a corrupt police officer being allegedly involved in the murder of another officer as part of a cartel alliance known as La Familia, as well as his association with another popular Puerto Rican artist who is a member of the Los Diablos de Llorens Torres, or the Devils of Llorens, a housing project in San Juan. Welcome to the murder capital of the United States. When watching the news in Puerto Rico, despite it being a U.S. territory, I was surprised to find that the news in Puerto Rico is not censored at all compared to in the mainland. When watching the coverage of a double homicide in Calle, I was not expecting to see 2 unblurred bodies lying in the background while the police were surveying the crime scene, something I obviously can't show you here. But this scene was a result of a major conflict involving a man the FBI considered the most wanted fugitive in Puerto Rico, El Burro. And one of the most cold-blooded things about that first scene is that it took place outside of a bar called La Lomita, with a statue of Jesus Christ overlooking. This is not just any regular crime. What we're about to go over is pure evil. Now, El Burro's organization was also responsible for this first scene, but that's far from the worst crime attributed to him. Now, he was considered to be the head of a drug trafficking organization known as La Lorenzana. They seem to be very active around the neighboring municipalities of Salinas and Calle, as the double murder of the Los Viaros members took place near a strip of restaurants in Calle, and the next hit I want to cover took place at a restaurant called Los Antonitos in the Playa neighborhood of Salinas. A 33-year-old man named Rafael was eating alongside his girlfriend and a small child. But the cold-blooded part about it, other than the child being directly next to him, is the fact that as the hitman walked into the restaurant, I wouldn't even describe him as inconspicuous. He walked in clearly looking like he was on a mission, and by the time he was standing in front of Rafael, the man still hadn't even lifted his head from the plate, completely unaware of what was about to happen. And the woman beside him didn't scream or even barely change the expression on her face. While in the mainland United States, people will see this and assume that she must have set him up. But I doubt it, especially if the child was also hers. Likely, she is just far too desensitized to violence, being an adult that likely lived her entire life in Puerto Rico. She simply moves out of the way, already knowing that her date is long gone, and likely not even being completely surprised by such a thing taking place. Now, according to the police, Rafael had a history of involvement in the criminal underworld on the island, and he was just one of 6 murders that took place from that Saturday to Sunday night. A native of Caguas, a little ways away from Salinas, it's unclear why Rafael felt so comfortable in this area, and why despite his history, he was not paying attention to his surroundings. But on to the rapper and his accomplice, the Crooked Cop. C Dobleta, a man also known in Puerto Rico as the White Devil, who despite his YouTube channel only being a year old, he's managed to put together over 170 million total views on his music videos. But clearly, with a name like the White Devil, music is not the only thing he was known for on the island. On March 29th, 2024, Officer Eliezer Ramos, a 12-year veteran of the police force, had just finished his shift and was headed home when he spotted 3 motorcycles and an ATV firing at a vehicle that was passing by. Despite his shift being over, he was still a law enforcement officer, so he called for backup and followed the group into Sabana Abajo, a housing project in Carolina, an area just outside of San Juan. But unfortunately for Officer Ramos, he was shot and killed soon after entering the complex, and the assailants even stole the service weapon off of his body. Months later, the FBI, Carolina Police Department, and the ATF will launch a major raid and arrest 56 gang members, including C Dobleta, and also 47-year-old Officer Fernando Torres, who was accused of giving information to drug traffickers. And although he had been recommended for expulsion from the force, likely due to some suspicion of his involvement with gangs, he remained and was likely a factor in how comfortable the gang was in murdering a lone officer and stealing his gun, rather than just running away. And due to this being a federal case, many of them, including Cito Bleta, possibly faced the death penalty. It's unfortunate when an officer like Ramos, someone willing to go above and beyond the call of duty for the good of the public, someone needed in the police force of such a dangerous area, is killed and even undermined by the fact that you have other officers working alongside the very men that killed him. Puerto Rico has always been known for its high murder rate, but it appears that the FBI and local authorities have had enough, with the FBI regularly intervening on the island, and this has actually yielded some results, with the homicide rate steadily dropping since 2021, which was a very dangerous year for many cities in the US. Now El Burro, who was also accused of dismembering rivals and dumping their remains in ravines, was eventually caught along with much of his organization just months before the indictment against Cito Bleta and the La Familia Alliance. And while the Devils of Llorens are likely still active, many members of Los Viraos, El Burro's main rivals, have been arrested. Puerto Rico, named by Columbus for St. John the Baptist, or the man credited with performing the baptism of Jesus in the Jordan River, was also known by its native Taino people as Boriquen, which most likely means land of our valiant Lord. This is also why many Puerto Ricans refer to themselves as Boricua. Also going by the name the Land of Enchantment, it's hard not to see why. But unfortunately, since the US refuses to make it a state, despite most of its residents supporting the idea, Puerto Rico misses out on much of the positive aspects of statehood. It receives lower Social Security for its retirees and Medicare, despite being more populous than many US states, and the territory also can't be bailed out by the federal government like other states, as being a territory, it cannot file for bankruptcy. US citizens in Puerto Rico also cannot vote for representatives or senators, and all of this plays a role when the island needs help, receiving little from the federal government after suffering back-to-back hurricanes only 2 weeks apart in 2017, which knocked out 95% of all cell service, 43% of wastewater treatment, 97% of all roads were blocked off, and nearly 30% of all healthcare facilities were damaged. President Trump at the time even insisted that FEMA and first responders spent too much time in Puerto Rico in the aftermath. But it's not his fault. The US has been mistreating the island since long before President Trump was even born. Here's a horrifying image of the power grid in Puerto Rico before and after the storms. Since 1898, the island has essentially been a third world colony of a first world nation. When I visited San Juan as a tourist, I was dining at an outdoor restaurant, watching the festival take place in the streets thinking, man, this has to be the most beautiful place I've ever visited in my entire life. Then, to snap me back to reality, a homeless man approached us with a large infected mass growing on his arm, begging us to help him. I was only 10 at the time and obviously unable to help, but I'll never be able to forget the contrast of a suffering man on the beautiful island. And almost 10 years later, I find myself wondering if he's even still alive. May God bless Puerto Rico, La Isla del Encanto. Thank you for watching.